Toxic masculinity has become a significant problem in today's society, and I think there's a number of reasons for this, but the main reason that I think there is the lack of good male role models in today's society. And one thing that I think men could take this from is actually from romance novels. Romance novels often get dismissed as, oh, they're just books for women, they're not for men, and there's this stereotype around men reading romance books. But after reading so many romance books in the last year and really finding my passion for reading through these romance books, I've realized that these books might be the best thing that we could possibly have as role models for men. There's a few key criticisms that are often given to these books, such as they're unrealistic, they're all full of perfect men, or they give women unrealistic expectations. But after reading them for so long, I do not believe that's the case. Yes, there are probably some books that do, I'm not going to dispute that, but a lot of these foundations of where these men come from, I have been raised with similar values in myself, and it's why a lot of these books resonate with myself, and I think they're so important to learn from. I've learned from some of these books myself, even though I had a lot of these values myself. There's so many things to learn from, and I think they're such an important thing for men to try and follow into. There's often a stereotype of the type of book or story that men should like. It should be action and thrillers and horrors and all these sorts of things that provide this bravo, this macho mentality, that there's no weakness and emotion is weakness, and it should all be about action and being strong, and you shouldn't show any weakness whatsoever, shouldn't show any vulnerability in yourself. But what I've learned from the romance books is showing that vulnerability is one of the most important, one of the strongest thing that men can do. And this stereotype needs to change, because growing up, it was the same for me. You wouldn't have read the romance books, even things like High School Musical. You were looked down on for liking those sorts of things, but it's one of the most important things that you should be reading. I think the conflict between the two is actually one of the most important things to look at. It's not anymore about how many people can he kill, how many people can he defend, can he fight his way out of anything. It's how does he resonate with the people in his life, how does he protect and support the family, support the people that he loves in his life, while still maintaining that a true masculinity of providing for who you love and showing respect to people and showing that you can be an inspiration and a good role model to others. Whereas in a lot of these books, it is just fight, fight, fight. It's so big muscles, big manly things. Whereas there's that switch with romance novels, there is that side of things. Obviously you do get, like, I mean, you have Fourth Wing, he's riding dragons and all this sort of thing, he's defending his honour. ACOTAR, Rhysand's this big warrior that's fighting for these, but the true core of it is to defend his people and to show how much he cares about the people in his life, how much he cares about Feyre, how much he cared. He's stuck in that mountain with Amarantha for 50 years to protect the people that he loved. And that was the true meaning and the true moral behind what he did. Not because he wanted to look manly and tough and I'm the hero, I'm the protector of everything. He had that true reason of being vulnerable and being emotional with the people he loved and showing what he did. Now, I think he handled that slightly differently. He maybe should have explained what he was doing whenever he went for that time. But that's the side of things, that it's the sacrifice that you make for the people that you love and the respect that you show to the people you love, to let them make their own decisions and support you in whatever way you can. Not just, oh, I'm bravo, I'm macho, I can do whatever, and I don't need any help, I don't rely on anything, I'm not going to be vulnerable, I'm not going to show any emotion. That's the distinction that I think is so important in these books. Following on from that point, I think these books actually provide an insight into what women actually want in their lives. You get to see what's actually truly attractive to someone. It's not always the muscles, the money, the billionaire mindset, the billionaire thoughts. It's not all about that. Like, yes, obviously there's this physical attraction to people, I understand that, but the thing that really makes someone attractive and a resolute and strong person that people want to be around is the loyalty, the communication, the vulnerability, the willing to apologize and speak to people and admit when they're wrong and admit when things aren't necessarily always going to be easy, and they're ready to rely on other people and have that, but also provide and protect whenever they feel that they need to, and have that resilience in themselves and the confidence in themselves to actually show that they're vulnerable enough to speak their mind, show the emotion. And I understand there is the stigma with men of not wanting to show emotion. I struggled with it significantly through my life, especially going around rugby. You didn't want to show emotion. It was so, like, you thought of it as a sign of weakness, but it never was. And to be honest, I have some of the best friends that I have, because the times that I did show emotion to them, I had nothing but support and nothing but strength around me and resilient characters around me to help me support that. I also had friends who were girls that growing up that were so incredible that I felt I could trust completely. And this was purely platonic between the two of us, but it was incredible friendship to show how much that it was valued in myself, that I was willing to show the emotion, and how much valued I felt myself when they listened, but how much I could show my value to them and show that I understood where they were coming from and stayed with them when they needed me and provided that foundation and that rock, just like they did for me in so many other ways. And that's where I think romance novels are so important for men nowadays. Another key thing that I think romance novels demonstrate so well is the importance of emotional intelligence. Now, I've always felt that I've had quite good emotional intelligence, but I'm always willing to learn and advance this myself. I've always tried to be as open as I can, especially as I've matured into my life. But showing that emotional intelligence, and you're not always going to be perfect. Look at Johnny Kavanagh, for example. He isn't perfect, but he's willing to accept when he knows that he's wrong. He went and he apologizes to Shannon. He explains why he did what he did, but is willing to take accountability for his actions and speak to her and understand where she's coming from and why she needs it. Kate Eaton from the Heartless series, I think, is another prime example. Yes, he's quiet, he's protected, he's reserved, but he notices the small things. He notices things that will make an important distinction in people's lives, and will look out for exactly who and what was really truly important in his life and for the life of his others. He looks after his family, he looks after Willa, he does everything that he can to be as strong as he can. Now again, is he perfect? No, I think there's a lot of times that he really didn't want to show emotion. He was much more reserved than he should have been, but especially as the book goes on, you see the importance of the emotional intelligence and opening up to Willa. And I think that's such an important thing that people can learn from. I think it's an incredible thing for people to learn from. I think as well you can learn from books like ACOTAR about the mutual respect, especially in the later relationships, the mutual respects, the opportunities to grow together and individually, and the option to give the people the choices of what they want to do. It was so important. Obviously, we're not looking at Tamlin in this. We hate Tamlin. We absolutely hate that. But Rhysand, whenever he had Feyre there, he brought her in as their High Lady and she was treated with just amount, if not more respect than Rhysand multiple times in that. The way that it should be. She was one of the strongest characters in that series. So resilient, so incredible that she brought her way up and she did it all by herself and showed that resilience, but had Rhysand there. Yes, there was the support, but she was so individually important and she got to make that choice as well. And it was just, and the fact that whenever you look at the whole Night Court is made up of such strong women and men. Obviously you have Cassian and Azriel, both willing to show emotion when they need to be and willing there to be supportive, with Rhysand and Az constantly working together and supporting each other and calling each other out when they were wrong. And I think that's such an important distinction as well that I've always had in my life, as people will call me out when I'm wrong and I will call my friends out when they're wrong. And that's such an important distinction as well, as being able to call out people when they're doing things wrong or there isn't something that they just need to fix. Not fix necessarily, but they need to take accountability for and respect for their actions. I think that's so important. And going back to my original point about their toxic masculinity being such an issue, you have people who are not good role models in the slightest, unfortunately, affecting young men significantly. But I think what happens in these books is you're shown what healthy masculinity truly should be. Are all the characters perfect? No. You have Joey Lynch, an incredibly diverse and complicated character, but he is so strong in how he shows his support for his family. He just makes sure that everyone is okay and he puts others before himself. Yes, he struggles with the addiction, he struggles with all of that, and that's obviously a much more difficult thing. And some of the things he does to Aoife because of that addiction, they're not perfect. I understand that. Johnny puts Shannon first, puts all of his friends first, makes sure that they're safe. And he did often focused on his career to put that first, and it shows how successful and driven he was. But he also realized that life wasn't all about this success and being as successful as possible. And Shannon helped him realize that and show that there's more to life in this than what is actually apparent in so many other areas. I think that's what's a key distinction, is seeing what the healthy masculinity should be rather than this toxic masculinity. It shouldn't always be about big muscles. Oh, I'm rich, I'm successful, I'm all of this. It should be understanding the people who are there, showing accountability, showing that you're able to show emotion and vulnerability, and being there for the people who are in your life in the best way that you possibly can be is the most important thing about healthy masculinity. And it's not shown enough in role models. And I think people like Johnny, people like Joey, Rhysand, yes, sometimes he's a wee bit, I understand there's a bit of a discrepancy with some things that he does, but he's such a good role model in so many ways. There are so many good role models in these books, and I think especially for young men, the Boys of Tommen series is a significant one. I know I wouldn't necessarily recommend those books to some younger age groups, but young men learning their way through life and just trying to figure out their lives, taking a lot of inspiration from what the good parts of these characters come from, would be so important and make such a difference in developing young men today, rather than some of these other role models that are unfortunately so prominent nowadays in social media, in movies, etc. I think there are so many better role models that can be did, and I think the fact that we're not getting these shows and things like that, I'm hoping that this will start to sort of show that people can like these sorts of things and take these role models. And I'm kind of hoping that my social media sides of things is showing that it's okay to read these types of things. I mean, I've played rugby all my life. If you looked at me without any sort of context, you would maybe think, oh, he's just that typical masculine man. And showing that even as that, I still appreciate these books and love these books and understand why they're so important. I'm hoping that this will start to sort of transition and allow men to realize that it's okay to be a part of this, and it's okay to like these things and take these role models and listen to them and learn from them. Because I think we need that. I think we need that nowadays. I think another thing that I find so interesting about these romance novels is that it helps to understand the mindset of women, and the mindset and the fears and the insecurities and what goes on really in your head, because you get a perspective mostly from the woman's perspective in these romance books, and you understand the fears, the insecurities, what they like, what they dislike, what's important to them. And I think that's such a key thing for men to learn from, and it gives actually a very clear insight without being too intrusive into maybe someone that you know or something like that. It gives you an insight into it that you can learn from and think, right, okay, this is what's important. This is something that I should be focusing on, that I should really be improving in myself, or trying to make sure that I facilitate in any relationships in my life, whether it's your mum, a girlfriend, a sister, whoever it is in your life. You start to understand what's really truly important to these people, because in these books you get to see where they're very vulnerable. The authors are often writing maybe about themselves, or some of their certain thoughts about themselves, or they're expressing emotions that they feel like they can't really do in real life. So you do get that sort of slight insight into it, and I think that's so important to understand. Not in any way to like take advantage, because unfortunately I do think that some people, maybe you would use that as an opportunity to take advantage. I think it's important so that you can prioritize making sure that you are, I'm trying to think how to word it, that you are prioritizing and focusing on providing and being there and being that foundation for the people in your life in the best way that you can be. And also understanding that it's okay for you to rely on them, because I think it also shows how a lot of the time women want their men to rely on them. They want the people in their lives to rely on them and feel safe and secure, both of each other, to be safe and secure, to be vulnerable together and to grow together and actually explore that, rather than just having this dynamic of, I'm not going to show any emotion, I'm not going to show anything that I'm worrying about. It gives that intricate detail of like, okay, this is actually what we want in the relationship and what we should be doing and exploring. I think that's such a healthy way to explore relationships through all of life. I think that's such an incredible way to do it, and I think that's really what's such an important thing to understand, where you are getting a woman's perspective as well, and being able to understand that and advance your life and make sure that you're doing the best that you can be through that lens is an incredible thing. Now, I would also like to preface, is romance perfect? No, it's not. There's often a lot of toxic relationships portrayed in romance. There's a lot of possessive behavior portrayed. There's that sort of billionaire fantasy in a few of them. We get into dark romance, and sometimes as a fantasy that's obviously fun to explore, but in a significant amount of proportion of life, we don't want to look at any of that. So is romance perfect, and should we be learning everything from romance books? Absolutely not. Are some of the men too perfect and too unrealistic? Maybe. There is a lot of that. But that's not what's important with those sorts of things. You need to read with nuance. And I think that's another thing that's sometimes lost in today's society, especially with the sort of the masculinity, because I think striving to be fit and healthy, striving to do that isn't necessarily inherently a bad thing, but the way that it's portrayed and not taken with nuance because of these poorer role models, I think is where the danger lies. And that's where I think where you can read with nuance from the romance novels, and you'll get a lot more of that, because you have like people who are in fantastic shape, providing strong, robust men that you can learn from and have the good aspects of that side of masculinity, but also explore the slightly more vulnerable and healthier side of masculinity through that. And I think that's where the nuance really needs to come in. After reading these books, I don't think romance books will teach men how to get women or anything like that. I think what it really does is it teaches people how to understand people. And I think this is maybe the reason that romance books are one of the biggest genres, if not the biggest genre in publishing, is because it shows us truly what kindness and compassion is. Not because women want perfect men, but because it shows us how kindness and resilience and compassion and vulnerability is such an important thing in today's society. And that is something that I think is a key takeaway, and the key takeaway into why romance books are so important.